renewable energy in Nigeria, clean energy in Nigeria, and the transition as a whole in Africa. Is that possible? We'll find out in this report. Stay tuned. Max is a company revolutionizing future mobility in Africa and spearheaded by co-founder and president Chinedu Azodo. They currently have 40,000 fleets of electric vehicles in their portfolio. I had the honor to visit one of the branches in Lagos, Nigeria. Here is Chinedu speaking on electric vehicles in Nigeria.
Over the last decade, what you've seen happen globally is a shift from primarily gas engine vehicles to more renewable sources. The goal obviously being that we want to be able to improve quality of life for folks on the planet, and so that means alternative sources of power for vehicles. You've obviously seen the likes of Tesla and Co come in and take over, do amazing work in the global West. But what you see happening in the global South, or in the global North now, what you see happening in the global South, there's no real player who's come in and dominated the area. And that's fundamentally because the mobility needs of the global South are very different from the mobility needs of the global North, right? Where the North is dominated by four-wheelers and cars and buses and larger passenger vehicles, larger capacity vehicles. In the global South, you have dominance from micro-mobility. So here we're looking at things like motorcycles. Cars are still important, right? When you think about the mass opportunity and the mass scale, you want to look at things like global, motorcycles, you want to look at bicycles, you want to look at electric-assisted 2- and 3-wheelers.
He also spoke about how they provide their services in Nigeria and what they call their electric vehicles.
We help commercial 2- and 3-wheel drivers gain access to motorcycles on a daily basis, right? And over time gives them a path to ownership, right? So we don't really care where they work, what platforms they use the vehicles on. Fundamentally, what we focus on is that they actually use the vehicle. So we have the technology, the IoT systems, to be able to track how these vehicles are being used, what they're being used for, and get a sense for what the experience looks like for the customer through engagement and interviews. And we've seen in communities like Bamu Bamu, where farmers were using the motorcycles to move things from the farm to the farm gate to sell, right? We saw commercial taxi drivers in those communities as well actually borrow our motorcycles to carry passengers around in the community and stuff like that. That's in a rural area. In Lagos, for example, we have a fleet of electric vehicles that have done deliveries for Jumia for the last maybe 3 to 5 years, right? In Ghana, we have about 300 electric motorcycles operating and providing services to business partners out there. In Ibadan, we have a similar setup. So what we've seen is, for folks, what they fundamentally care about is, do I save money by using EVs? And the answer is yes, right? And so because we've answered that question, we provide the infrastructure, we provide the vehicles, they're able to work and whatnot, right?
Here is the electric vehicle technical lead, Pelumi, speaking on the different electrical bikes and tricycles they have with some comparisons and how they work.
This is the Max EM3. It's our flagship electric motorcycle, and it runs on a 6 kilowatts motor. Here you can see it doesn't have any engine, just a motor and a battery. So let me just show you around the bike a little bit. So we have a storage compartment here, which also has a USB charger for riders to charge their phone, and it has a safety breaker. So this is the safety control, so that when you're not riding, you just don't leave it on. So it has a safety breaker, and turn it on here and lock. And here is where the ignition is. So for example, you can see battery level, you can see kilometers, you can see this D indicates the mode because the bike has 3 modes. Here you can see Sport, Drive, and Eco mode. So once I move to Eco, it changes here, Drive here, and Sport mode here. So this shows the audio, the time, and the temperature. And we have other features: headlamps, full lights, signal tones, hazard lights, and it has a horn, and it's very fast. Let me run you through the throttle, because we have the throttle here, and you can see how fast it moves. So this bike goes as high as 120 kilometers, and the battery range is between 80 to 100 kilometers per single charge. So this is the T1 tricycle. It's a cargo, it's a passenger tricycle. Also electric, doesn't use petrol, doesn't use fuel, and you can see it here on the dashboard. So you can see on the dashboard the distance covered. You can see the battery voltage here, kilometers, and also has 3 modes: reverse, neutral, and drive mode. So when it's on park, it's on neutral. It has a handbrake here. Also has on turn signals, lights, more lights, hazard lights, and some other controls here. And this is the foot brake, and of course the throttle is here. So this is the cargo tricycle. It might interest you to know that this has done 20,000 deliveries over the last 2 years. So it's similar to this, but this is basically for cargo. That is passenger, but this is cargo also. And it has a cargo storage behind.
Can we open that?
Yes, please. So it has storage behind. Storage behind, and we use this for deliveries.
He also put us through how they charge the batteries of the electric vehicles.
So this is a BSS, a battery substation cabinet that takes 6 batteries. As you can see here, you can see light indicators that shows the level of charge of each battery in the cabinet. Has different features, shows the cabinet, the battery voltage, battery temperature, the currents, and all of that. So for example, now a rider comes to this battery substation to change batteries, because this is what charges the batteries of the motorcycles, the electric motorcycles. The attendant just goes, opens up any of the cabinets that is full, and the door just pops open, and pulls out the battery, unlocks, and inserts into the motorcycle, and you're good to go.
Branches.
So we've trained technicians, proper trainings. We also carry out retrainings to make sure that they're up to date with new technology, because the interesting thing about EV is that every time there's something new that is coming out, because as we all know, it's the new technology, so there are new things that we need to learn. So we've trained our technicians, we carry them on trainings.
And also bikers?
Yes, we also have routine town hall meetings where we train our riders and on the do's and don'ts of these devices.
The president and co-founder of Max mentioned the things he felt the government could assist the sector in, and how Nigeria could reposition itself in the electric vehicle business for Africa.
Duties kill a lot of the margins, like in being able to bring this stuff out and deliver them sustainably to the market, right? Duties at 20% plus, right? And you're paying duties in USD or equivalent of USD. So it makes it very, very, very difficult. I think if the government is very interested in supporting EVs as like a channel or business that they want to scale, right? A lot can be done from a regulatory standpoint in terms of doing things like moving barriers to entry. So, cost of clearing, shipping, all those other things. If there are ways to improve that will help massively, right? I think there's a lot of folks who are doing things like, also contributing to the EV space, but from a different angle, right? They're doing things like mining lithium and whatnot, right? I think if the government is also able to get closer to that space, right, and be able to, figure out how to leverage credits that come from being able to produce some lithium out of Nigeria, to be able to get global credits to make sure we can get more competitive pricing of parts or whatnot for EV production, that'd be amazing as well, right? I think those are 2 great opportunities. I think something we've seen a lot of other countries do is governments that are interested in EVs actually coming in and saying, okay, for this particular program, I'm going to subsidize up to $1 billion, up to $10 million or $50 million, or whatever the case may be. Those kinds of subsidies being built into stuff like this will make it easier to also push this in the market. And essentially what the government's role is to help drive distribution in that sense, right? Through favorable tax regimes, favorable discounts and supports that government can actually participate in. And that will help deliver EVs. I think government going out and buying EVs themselves is very tough, right? Because what that also does, it puts the onus on the government to figure out how to manage that kind of operation, figure out how to manage that kind of procurement, compliance type setup. And that's just the skill set that the government has, right? The government is, is what leads us. They provide the administrative, arbitrary, compliance, lawmaking arms, right? So I think just better policy, policies that promote and push EV. So subsidies, discounts, whatever the case may be. Cutting back on things like cost of clearing, duties, all those kind of things, and figuring out if there's a way for us to get credits as a country for being able to contribute to lithium production and all that stuff for the global. I think those three things will help drive down costs.
He then spoke about how he's handling the brain drain in the country and industry.
In 2024, what we've come to see that is clear is that when you hire people, you have to invest heavily in them, right? Because if you don't invest in them, one of the fears people have is I invest in people and they go, right? But it's even more dangerous for you if you don't invest in them and they stay, right? So it's an unfortunate reality we'll deal with, right? Nigeria has gone through an incredible amount of brain drain, I think across Africa as well, right? And so what we focus on is we build for what we have, right? So for example, one of the, and as you think about that, people say things like, oh, I don't want to have churn in my organization. 95% of my churn comes from people moving overseas, right? So I focus instead on building an organization that is resilient to churn, not one that avoids churn, right? And what does that mean? You have a pipeline of young talent coming in consistently. We have a large internship program that we run. We have about 40 to 60 interns coming in every year. And the idea is that for them to learn so that within a year or a year and a half, they're delivering really top world-class value, right? So we build with the mindset that people will leave, right? We hate to see them go, right? But we also want to make sure that people are feeling successful in their careers. And you never know, they may go and then they return, right? So it's a question of, how do you build that pipeline, right? We have a very robust driver assessment process, right? That includes something called a psychometric test, where we're essentially getting a sense for you as an individual and your personality, right? We also take time to understand your knowledge of driving rules. We have a driving test that you have to participate and pass that allows us to also assess your ability to manage these vehicles and operate them, right? And then obviously you have to have a license and everything else in between, which is pretty standard. But we have a well-defined process for assessing drivers, onboarding them, and making sure that they're set up for success, right? And then even beyond that, right, it's one thing to onboard the good drivers, another thing to provide the things that enable success, right? So we have a lot of technology and automation in place to ensure that we're delivering consistent processes and service to our customers. We have teams that provide, after-sales support. So we have maintenance teams, we have refurbishment teams, we have inventory teams that are responsible for, putting parts, and we track something called good working condition, where we focus on what is the health of the vehicle so that you, as a driver, have a good experience, right? Because we come to see that people will not pay for vehicles that don't work for them, right? And then beyond that, so that focuses, what we talked about also focuses a lot on the vehicle itself. But on the driver themselves, we also have something called Max Advantage that we bundle with the subscription business. That essentially what it gives them is access to health insurance, access to passenger liability insurance for the passenger as well. They have life insurance, group life, they have accident insurance, they have emergency response, they have wealth management, and we provide a digital wallet as well to help them manage finances and stuff. So we don't think only about a subscription for vehicles for the drivers. We think about what delivers the financial well-being that enables the driver to succeed.
Max NG truly have an array of electric vehicles that check the no carbon emissions and truly noiseless vehicles. I for one had to try, and if I do say so myself, it was a smooth ride and noiseless. And what makes it best is that it utilizes only clean energy. Mr. Chinedu spoke about adoption of electric vehicles and clean energy in Nigeria, with the outlook of this in Nigeria.
We've done this for 4 years and counting. Well, 5 years now, 2019, right? We've done this for 5 years and counting. But I think it's early days. I think within the next 2 to 3 years, things will really take off, right? We've kind of gone initially flat. we're just beginning to take off a bit here. That steep curve of explosive growth will happen within the next 2 to 3 years. And I think the folks today who are investing in the infrastructure, investing in the networks, investing in the vehicles, investing in the batteries, building out the distribution systems, all that stuff, are those who will benefit from it in that next 2 to 3 years, right? So this is the time to fund these opportunities. This is the time to get involved. This is the time to deliver the program subsidies and whatnot that will help this work. So as in 2 to 3 years, as this explodes, everybody who's coming and investing at this particular point has the opportunity to actually benefit, right? Whether that be government in seeing more sustainable options on the road, right? Better taxation, tax models around this. There's so much more value that will come, but that takeoff has to happen,
We truly do have businesses in Nigeria assisting in the best way they can to move the country where it needs to get to. Max are one of these, championing that zero net emission is possible. We just need to keep working towards it. And I got to be a conductor for a day. For Arise News, Sadiq Suleiman Garba.